Welcome to the Hook. It's the Americas Rugby Championship in review. So, hate to I wouldn't call it disparagement, but get overly critical about this tournament and where it's going and how we did. But I think there's going to be some things to look at throughout, the progress that we made so shortly under Coach Gold. First, I talked about this much earlier after, I think it was the Canadian match, to say, hey, look at what we've done just in the last, 8 months. So credit to John Mitchell for establishing a culture of player ownership. I think that was very important, where the players own the training, the players and the coach just installs the system and has them work, and then he holds them accountable, and then the players also hold each other accountable. A lot of some negative things were said about John Mitchell, and the reality was he was probably the coach we needed at the time. Whereas I think Gary Gold is, he has what I'm seeing right now says that, he can be the guy for a very long time. And I've previously talked about his coaching tree and how extensive it is, and that he develops coaches, right? So I think, Gary Gold can get us through this next World Cup cycle and then 2 more years into preparation, and then probably hand off the reins to a guy that's on this staff right now and, train them up. Because I think you've got some very talented coaches on this staff. Greg McWilliams, who is the director of rugby at Yale, and Scott Lawrence, who is the defense coach, who was the previous head coach at Life University and is also the USA Selects head coach. So I think you've got a really young and up-and-coming coach in Sean Pittman, who I think is only 27. He retired as a professional due to some injuries and hasn't really been around at the top level. But someone said, hey, I think Sean Pittman's a good coach. So they brought him in, and we've seen a lot of improvement in our set pieces, which is what he focused on. He's probably going to progress further along and take over coaching the forwards completely. But I really like the staff. The staff does a lot with what they have, and we've taken so many guys, and we won a bunch of games. The first ARC, I think we capped over 15 players. Maybe it was even higher than that. This ARC, we capped 9 players, but most of those caps were awarded in the second and third matches. No one received a cap after Chile. So all of these guys that became capped were used a lot throughout that period of time. So guys, and all of these dudes that received their caps with the Eagles showed really well. First, Dylan Owdsley and Will Hooley played against Argentina 15. And and as well did Josh Whitby. Argentina 15. So they had their first appearance for the Eagles in an uncapped match, and then got their first caps against Canada. And then 6 more guys got their caps against Chile in Fullerton. And then every single one of those guys, minus Malone Aljabouri, had appearances throughout the rest of the tournament. And you look at these guys and you see, whereas a bunch of guys, I think from the first ARC were one cap wonders, because they just, I don't know what it was, they just were never able to fight back in. And all of these guys, if you look at how they played, we're looking at, the next crop of guys that's coming into the Eagles that can be mainstays. Will Hooley, man, I think that gives us a very strong fly half contender. And for a while, fly half used to be just as much a revolving door as scrum half was. But now I think we've got 4 really good dudes playing fly half in AJ McGinty, Will McGee, Will Hooley, and Ben Sema. And then we capped a new scrum half in Ruben DeHaas. If you were, I guess, a viewer of the Junior All-Americans and the USA selection, you saw what he could do down in Montevideo this last summer. And he's in the Cheetahs Academy, so I'm pretty sure he's going to end up on their Pro 14 side pretty soon because he can play. And then the really only surprise to me when it came to players is I hadn't seen Brendan Daly play ever. He was a men's All-American at Cal, so he has plenty of accolades. And then you have Paul Lasike, and a lot of people questioned, Paul Lasike, saying, hey, he's a little rusty. And the reality is he was rusty for about 5 minutes. But I will tell you, we haven't seen what he can do yet. Like, this guy has played rugby his entire life. Yeah, he played some football at BYU while he also played rugby. Yeah, he played with the Bears because he's an elite athlete, and he got that opportunity, and now he's come back to rugby, and he's going to play for the Utah Warriors. So we're going to see what he can do. I think after a season with the Utah Warriors, we'll really see what he can do. Saul Wuching, I want to say, if we're going to look at most improved player from when they first stepped on the pitch to when they left, Saul has improved a ton during this tournament, and he needs to be in a high-performance environment immediately, whether it's in the MLR, Pro D2, the RFU Championship, whatever. He needs to sign now because MLR is going to raise the level of all our guys, and you don't really want him improving every time the Eagles get called up. This isn't, where we've been previously when we have to rely on domestic amateur players to compete. I think the Major League Rugby is going to supplement very well the professional environments that we need for our players to develop. So, all these guys, I cannot stress how good the new guys are and how good they can become as contributors to the Eagles. Two new centers that can play, start right now in Lasike and Owdsley. A new scrum half that can push the two dudes that were playing scrum half and make them better as well as make himself better. Another lock, loose forwards that are going to be special. Especially Malone Aljabouri. Wow. When that dude touched the ball, he was just... So, and that's where we are, which is a great place to be. But let's look at these games. I want to say it wasn't our best game, but it was definitely our most complete game. And that was the 17-10 victory over Argentina 15. It's probably the most physical match of the tournament in regards to talent level we faced and how well drilled that talent was at the scrum and in the halfbacks. Their halfbacks were amazing. And we were able to achieve parity in the scrum and definitely had the drive with our locks and loose forwards. And then overall, we executed with overmatch just enough to get that victory at home, and a team that we had tied twice. So the math said we were going to tie again. And I was there. It was an effort that was amazing to watch in person. So I was very happy about that. And then moving on to USA versus Canada, we beat them 29-10, whereas in the summer we had just dismantled them. And I think this is a bit of us getting our feet wet, right? With a new coach, new staff, same staff as the fall. But getting our feet wet, having a few debutantes get their caps. But also, I think that the Canadians, although they lost a bunch of their pros that were recalled to their teams overseas, that they found their pride a bunch in this game because after losing the aggregate series to Uruguay for the Americas 2 slot. And, you know, they found their pride, and that's what they played with. And that's what kept it sort of close. We scored early, and this is where we sort of struggled a bit through the rest of the series until we played Uruguay, was that, you know, we weren't able to keep our foot on the gas pedal. We didn't put our foot on their throat to just end it. And, you know, their amateur scrummagers can scrum with us decently, but we should have just completely demolished them the way they were on the back foot from that aggregate series. Well, not even two losses to Uruguay. One was a dismantling at home, and the other was a close match where they just gave it all. And then the next two matches were very interesting. We ended up going on the back foot against Chile a little bit. Yes, we were at home, and the scoreline does not look like that because we made up for it in the second half. But here's the thing with Chile, and again, eventually with Brazil, is that Chile, when they played against Argentina 15, raised their level after a bad game against Brazil. So even though they didn't really do well this tournament at all, you saw the kind of intensity that they can play with against Argentina and us. They just made it frustrating on defense and executed the small things on offense to sort of keep them in the game in the first half. But, like, we had the talent level to just demolish them in the scrum, and we didn't do it, and I wasn't sure why. But obviously, backline talent was just... It was a game where talent took over, you know? Then moving on, you know, I don't know what the call was, but Chris Bowman comes in from Leicester, who hadn't been named to the original side. Dina Waldron ends up being unavailable with a shoulder injury for this game, and this is, I think, our scrum really suffered. We conceded a lot of penalties in the scrum at the tight head position, and I think Angus McClellan should have started that match, but he didn't. And then we also lost Paddy Ryan. He ended up being sent to get foot surgery prior to that game. We ended up winning against Brazil 16-45, but at one point it was 16-26, and we were on the back foot. And then we woke up, which is important because at every point, all of those three games, where we struggled a little bit, we woke up and we figured it out and we got over those humps. Whereas previous to that, I don't think our teams were ever mentally prepared to get over those humps when we're on the back foot and, you know, regain the momentum, which is what we did in the second half. So Nick Savetta's on the bench for a high tackle, and Tony Lamborn tackles Brazil's lock Lopez, and that's when it was over. That dude decided to kick Tony in the face, which I think those cleat marks are probably still there. And 2 minutes later, after that guy gets the card, Lopez, Tony Lamborn scores, and that's really when the tide turned. At that same point, and they took another yellow, and we just put the pedal to the floor, and we just went after it, scoring, two more tries and a penalty to go up 45-16 at the final. And so the real big positives for this series was that when we were on the back foot, we were able to recover and shift the momentum. Moving on to our final match, which was where, I want to say we played decent. It was our most complete game. It was what we should do, which is when non-rugby people look at who we are, the Americans, we produce the best athletes, the physical specimens. We should never lose to Uruguay. Well, we have lost to Uruguay 2 years ago. But the line on this game was -6 for Uruguay. I had USA -7, which, boys, I love you, because you guys showed what you needed to show. Again, we sort of had some scrummaging issues at the tight head position, although, Bowman didn't get dinged for it, so good on him for not getting dinged for it as much as I thought, as much as I would have being if I was the ref, because their loose head was getting dinged for it. It's kind of funny. And then Dino Waldron came in and provided stability in the scrum in the second half. After we were up like 40-0. And here's the real point about this game is like Uruguay had secured Americas 2, and all their overseas pros had left, yet they were in the hunt, provided they won with the bonus point to still win the tournament, even though we were 4-0. And, well, we didn't give them that chance. We scored the most points ever, most points ever since 2006 when we went up 49-0 at halftime over Barbados. It's the most points we've ever scored against Uruguay. The second largest points, the most points differential was the 60-6 victory in 1989, and so second largest win over and most points scored over Uruguay. So that was great. And, Uruguay is just a tough side because their boys train all the time together. They play against each other in the same exact club system in Montevideo. So they have this chemistry that is so much different that with this high-performance culture that makes them a really tough out for us previously. And, like I said, we played pretty well. But watching this game, we could have played better. A little more discipline, and, this game is, 80-19. But we went up 40-0. Actually, we went up 47-0 into the second half, and there were some mental lapses. But the reason why those occurred is because of the style that Uruguay was playing. They were playing this 4-4 structure on offense, which, they really wanted to pound us in the center of the field. They couldn't do that. But we pounded them in the center. And they got frustrated, and they played that way on defense. They played with the blitz to draw in our forwards and make it tough for us to get the ball out fast. But Sean Davies was able to get the ball out fast, or he would get box kicks and put us in position, which he did. Which was, this was a great sequence of events on Tony Lambourne's, on Dylan Fawcett's try. Sean Davies, box kick, and then Nate Augsburger grabs the ball and kicks a grubber, and then it's picked up by Paul Lasike and dished to Dylan Fawcett, who scores the try. Like, that was just an amazing sequence, and to an extent, I don't think it was a planned play, but it based on fundamentals, it worked out very well. So Uruguay changed up their style, and it really screwed them up a bit. Although I think if they played how they normally play, the score might have been more egregious. We might have scored 10 more points, and they would have scored less, based on, they would have made themselves less tired and us less tired. But the thing that I wanted to see in this match was our killer instinct. And whoa, our killer instinct came out, and it was a demolishing of a team that we had struggled with for the past 5 years. So, what does this mean for MLR? Well, if things keep going well with development under this coaching staff and how the league unfolds, every player is going to need to be on an MLR team because they're going to get the time to develop outside of being in the Eagles camp. And we're going to need to find another tournament at some point. The Pacific Nations Cup is apparently starting right now, so I think if we just manhandle this tournament next year, that will give us the data we need to talk to the likes of Fiji, Japan, and Tonga and Samoa, and bring back that, I think, the 2014 Pacific Nations Cup, and even maybe we can try and get the Maori All Blacks in there, depending on what's up, and you'll have a crazy big, awesome tournament for the winter, and it will allow us to further develop and push towards Tier 1 status. With that, Coach Gold, Greg McWilliams, Sean Pittman, Scott Lawrence, love you guys. You guys set the boys up for success, and they took everything that you did for them, and they won some games for themselves and for you guys. So it really capped off an awesome weekend. I'm Aaron Castro for The Hook. Like, subscribe, comment. You can catch me at the Strobro on Twitter.